Now, with environmental studies, we're doing human impact on the environment. And the biggest impact we have made on the environment is climate change. And what we have done with climate change is we have caused climate change. In the past, we were able to distinguish between our seasons. We could say when it was autumn, when it was spring, when it was summer. And now we're having predictable weather, and that is climate change. So in green, in many past papers, especially in the matching or terminology, they ask you what is climate. And climate is, let me just look for my pen. So it's the long-term weather conditions of an area. So climate is basically the rainfall and the temperature of an area. Okay. Now, with the greenhouse effect and why it's important, now let me explain to you. This is the greenhouse. You learned this last year. And they use glass because the glass allows the radiant energy to enter. Okay. So it allows the radiant energy from the sun to enter. Okay. Then inside here, there will be enough carbon dioxide produced by the plants by cellular respiration. It will be nice and there will be enough heat. There will be enough water that will be supplied by the sprinklers. It will be enough oxygen as well. And of course, the light. Those are the other factors. And these are the optimum conditions for photosynthesis. And it creates a greenhouse. And when this plant starts photosynthesizing, carbon dioxide accumulates. So that's why you see the greenhouse effect we need. It creates carbon dioxide, which creates heat. Now we need that heat. We need that heat because that greenhouse effect, it warms the earth. Okay, and you know already that with photosynthesis, certain plants, actually most plants, can photosynthesize at 25 degrees. Now imagine if there was no greenhouse effect, then the earth would be a snowball earth and nothing would get warmed. Most organisms as well, animals, need warmth for reproduction. So we need this greenhouse effect. Okay. However, we are not in a period of greenhouse effect. We're in another type of period, but I'll explain that to you just now. Now let's talk about the greenhouse effect quickly. Okay. So here I am, I'm drawing the earth. And that's the sun. And just do this. Now we have a layer called greenhouse gases, okay, around the earth. And the main greenhouse gas is carbon dioxide, and the second one is methane. Now you get two types of rays that the sun gives off. You get the long wavelengths of light. The long ones hit the earth, go back into the space. It is the short ones that hit the earth and it bounces and it gets trapped in this greenhouse gas layer. Gets trapped by this layer. And this layer actually acts like a blanket. And it keeps the short wavelength of the sun under this blanket. And then this short wavelength of light is now converted into heat, and that will increase the Earth's temperature. Okay, and that's what keeps us warm. That's the greenhouse effect. We need the greenhouse effect to survive. We need the greenhouse effect for warmth, right? We need the greenhouse effect to keep everything on Earth warm and to allow it to survive. Okay. However, we are in a period called enhanced greenhouse effect. And that's a word you must know. Instead of saying climate change, we can call it enhanced greenhouse effect. I'll show you now in the notes as well. We are now in a period where we have increased. When we're talking about enhanced greenhouse effect, it's different from the greenhouse effect. We have increased the amount of greenhouse gases. We've increased the amount of greenhouse gases. We've increased the amount of carbon dioxide and methane by our activities. This has caused an increase in the sun's rays that gets trapped by the greenhouse gases, and that can be converted into heat, and that will increase the Earth's temperature. And that is known as climate change. Please, we don't like to use the word global warming, but I see many papers still do it. Climate change, global warming, or enhanced greenhouse effect. That's the period we are in. We have increased the amount of greenhouse gases, increased the amount of carbon dioxide, methane, that has increased the amount of heat trapped by the layer of greenhouse gases, and that has led to an increase in the Earth's temperature and led to enhanced greenhouse effect. You will notice here, with enhanced greenhouse effect, you are using the word increase, increase, increase. Okay, so that's very, very important. Let me see where that is. There we are here. See, what is the enhanced greenhouse effect? Higher carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere, enhanced greenhouse effect leads to further increase in the Earth's temperature known as global warming. I told you, please, to rather use the word climate change first, and then in brackets, use global warming. So that's what I just told you is the period we're in. Now let's go back and learn what is it that has caused the increase in the greenhouse gases. Now the number one gas is carbon dioxide. Okay, we already know that it's carbon dioxide. And if you know the causes of the increase in the carbon dioxide, the main thing they love to ask you is solutions. We look at carbon dioxide. The first thing that we do in this country, that's too much, burning of fossil fuels to generate electricity. Now, I'd like to teach you the solutions immediately. Okay? So if burning fossil fuels is our number one problem of releasing carbon dioxide, our solution will be use an alternative energy source. And that will be immediately in brackets, you write nuclear, because we already have one nuclear power station, and that's Koeberg, and that's in Cape Town. Okay, that's the first main problem. Okay, now transport. Transport is the other big problem. So we use a whole lot of different types of transport. There's a whole lot of cars on the road. So the second solution, use public transport. So I'm teaching you the causes, and I'm teaching you the solutions as well, because sometimes they love to ask that. Okay, I just want to reply to this guy's message who's been. Okay, right. The other thing is, of course, yes, many industries. So industries fall under burning of fossil fuels. Look, there are many industries here in South Africa that release carbon dioxide. Are you there, Tila? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. It's just you can see my screen is a little bit frozen. I think I did something with my pen. Oh, there's it already. Industries are another problem. Okay. And so they also release carbon dioxide. So my solution here will be carbon tax. That people must pay. If they are releasing a lot more carbon dioxide, they must pay a carbon tax. And there are special filters that you can put in the chimneys that will filter out the amount of carbon dioxide. Okay, so that's that solution. Forest fires. Ugh, what can I do here? I can't actually stop the forest fires, but my best thing is I can educate people, because some of our forest fires in Cape Town that we experienced was because of human beings, right? They didn't put off their fires, and that's what damaged some of the places, the Knysna, and of course Fynbos. Okay, there's another cause that's causing an increase in the greenhouse gases. Okay, deforestation. The solution here will be plant more trees. Okay, now this is a famous question they love to ask here in the matric exam. Okay. How deforestation contributes to high carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. So you should already know that there's less trees, there'll be less carbon dioxide used in the atmosphere by photosynthesis. If you remember, plants and trees use a lot of carbon dioxide. Now, why specifically forests? Because forests, large trees, use a lot of carbon dioxide. So another word you can throw in there is they are carbon sinks. Some large trees, especially forest trees, can store the amount of the amount of carbon dioxide, and that's how they can decrease it. Now, if I cut down trees, what's going to happen? I'm increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Plant more trees. I just want to give you another heads up here. Scientists are saying now that the trees that are being planted now and the trees that are growing now are not as strong as the older trees. So the thing will be not plant more trees. If you really want a better answer, it would be stop deforestation. Okay, because the older trees, apparently their immune system is much, much better. They're much stronger. Okay, so that is now, I've done the carbon dioxide with you. I've done the solutions. We've done the causes and we've done the solutions. Tilla, I'm taping this lesson. Is that okay? And then I'm going to send it to you, right? So that you can revise it whenever you want to. Okay?
Okay.
Right. One impact of deforestation. I've told my kids in the matric exam, if they don't know an answer, they must just say decrease deforestation for decrease biodiversity for everything. So if you don't know an answer for human impact, right, decrease in biodiversity. Because if you destroy the forest, it will decrease biodiversity because all those plants, all those animals that live in that area, the or insects that dependent on those trees for habitat destruction and soil erosion. Okay, so let me explain another very important point to you. I keep on touching this part of your pen. Now, one thing I need to teach you, and this is very, very important. When you take away the roots of a plant, I'm not sure if you ever learned this, but the roots of a plant holds the topsoil. And the topsoil is very important, has a lot of water and nutrients. In the one essay, they wanted water and nutrients. Right. So if there's no roots, that topsoil washes away. There's no water, there's no moisture, there's no nutrients. If you take away the plants, animals can't grow because there's no food. Animals move to other areas, and eventually that topsoil gets washed away, and it leads to soil erosion. And those are three very, very important things that you must talk about. Okay. So that is now carbon dioxide. If you know the emission, if you know the cause, you can come up with a solution. Right. The second one is methane. Methane is also a greenhouse gas. Okay, it's one of the other greenhouse gases. Let's use green. Okay, and very important now. When bacteria and fungi decompose organisms, they release methane. Not only carbon dioxide, but they release methane. Okay, so it's produced in decomposition. It will take place in landfill sites because there's a lot of waste. So those two go together. It's in anaerobic respiration. It's basically decomposition, right? This one here actually means, besides decomposition, the first one means, I'm sure you know that herbivores, you learned this last year, the herbivores have 3 stomachs. So they digest a lot of cellulose. And when they're breaking down the cellulose, unfortunately, a lot of cattle and sheep, because they're herbivores, they release a lot of methane gas by flatulence. Flatulence is by farting. Okay, so when it says anaerobic respiration in some microorganism that occurs in the colons of the herbivores, it's cattle and sheep. This is flatulence. So when a cow actually farts, it releases a lot of methane. It's not only a cow, it could be any cattle, any sheep. And how many of them do we have? Okay, so that's when we talk about anaerobic respiration. So you just remember the byproduct of cattle and sheep, flatulence. Farting is also known as flatulence. Then decomposition. Any decomposition. Now, especially in landfill sites. Now, landfill sites, I'll talk to you about that soon. And waste, actually, any decomposition is also going to produce, unfortunately, methane. Okay. So mining, if you look, is another one that produces methane. One that's not here is also in rice paddies. And rice paddies. So look, if you look at all of these causes, do I have solutions yet, Tala? I can't. I don't have. Must I stop? Yes. Stop mining. Mining, we can filter the amount of harmful gases they release. Okay. But most of this methane is trapped underground, and that's when you have usually explosions. So they can find a way to harness the methane. That's what they're doing in Durban right now. So let me just see. So decomposition of landfill sites, methane is produced in these landfill sites or in these wastewater treatments. Because remember, these wastewater treatment plants, there's a lot of methane produced because they're using sewage. So the decomposition will cause a lot of methane to be produced. In Natal, what they're doing is they're collecting the methane and they're using it to supply for electricity. Because methane is a good it can be used for electricity source. It can be a good biofuel. The first one of flatulence, it's not so serious. We don't keep the cows around for so long. They graze and then we eat them for food, right? So there's no solution for that except you want to tell me kill the cows. No problem, we do kill them for food. So that's the methane. Okay, now deforestation. It just jumps to deforestation here. It's the large-scale removal of large-scale removal of trees to produce products that human beings need. Now, why do we need to cut down trees? We need probably those trees for places for maybe to build roads, houses, to plant crops that we need to eat, like potatoes. Okay, we use it for farming, housing, very important. The last one for logging, for timber, for wood, for furniture, for paper. Okay, now what's the consequence of deforestation? If I cut down all those trees, all the animals and the insects that relied on that forest goes somewhere else. Okay, and we can decrease the biodiversity. If there are endemic species, an endemic species is only found in one part of the world. So if there's an endemic species, that species could become extinct. And then, of course, there's your last one. You just learned it. Removes large amounts of carbon dioxide by photosynthesis. They could also provide medication, habitats, prevent soil erosion, and very important, trees affect the weather pattern by transpiration, which you know, trees release moisture into the atmosphere and they affect the weather pattern. So they can cause the unpredictable weather patterns like droughts and floods. Okay, now, consequences of deforestation. Carbon dioxide is not taken in by the trees. So trees are carbon sinks. It will lead to enhanced greenhouse effect and climate change. Habitats are destroyed, decreases biodiversity, soil erosion. You'll see it's the same thing I'm talking about over and over and over. Now let's look at our solutions. Governments are taking a step to protect the rainforest. That's very important. If you now go and Google what the Amazon jungle looks like compared to 30 years ago, that's actually scary that we've destroyed the Amazon jungle. And you know what the scientists say? There probably was a cure for corona, there, HIV. We destroyed it. Okay. Forests should be allowed for regeneration. Yes, we should allow the products, the trees to regenerate and grow. Okay. We should reduce the amount of products that we need from forests. Okay. Strengthen indigenous people's claims on forests. If we strengthen that claim, then we won't be able to destroy the forest and the forest will be more protected. We should use products from the forest sustainably. Use them in such a way that they are around for future generations. And look at it. Reforestation. Reforestation is they don't want to actually, um, uh, just get rid of the trees. You plant better trees, but I would say afforestation, prevent deforestation. That's the move that we're going into now. Enhanced greenhouse effect, I already explained it to you. Make sure you learn this work. Everything that's in a different color is important. Okay, we already did that. Now, global warming, or it's called climate change. Or climate change. And climate change has led to an increase in temperature. What does that mean? That means in some places, areas where it's dry, they're experiencing a flood. They're experiencing more drought, longer drought. And places where it's wet, they're experiencing flooding. Okay. Now, again, another cause of methane is the ice caps melting. So the ice caps melting is going to cause an increase in the sea level, which is dangerous, but it also increases the amount of methane as well. Okay. So there's it. It will increase the amount of, and too much methane can also increase the Earth's temperature and cause flooding. Unpredictable weather can lead to wildfires, which can cause soil erosion, desertification, can increase to loss of biodiversity. If I removed, if those plants, now remember, plants can only photosynthesize at 25 degrees. If I kill those plants by climate change, if the Earth's temperature is increasing, plants die, and then eventually all the organisms that will depend on those plants will also die. So that's how it increases biodiversity. Desertification, yes, the roots cannot hold the soil. No plants can grow in that area. That area can be turned into a desert. If I can't grow any food, and unfortunately it lead to food insecurity where people don't have food. Okay, very important. The weather, rainfall has become varying. It has become unpredictable. Some areas you get more rain, some areas you get drought. You can get extreme drought, which is what we are experiencing. You can get extreme rainstorms, flooding, tornadoes, hurricanes. Okay, so this is now the cause of rapid climate change or global warming. Okay, so this was one of the essay questions last year, one of the prelims. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was a Northwest paper. And this for me was a very shocking essay because look what they asked. How extinction of sea turtles can influence the food chain. How a drop in seagull population influences food security. For me, this was the one that got me. Okay, all the others are easy to do, but that's why I put it down here so we can also discuss papers at the same time. So in one paper, they asked, what are the causes of rapid global warming? Right? You already know. Causes increase in greenhouse gases. Burning of fossil fuel has increased the amount of carbon dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, that's in CFCs. What's another cause? Deforestation, less carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Decomposition of waste in landfill sites, there's it there, rice paddies. Okay. Number of livestock, as the more and more animals we have, more methane they release. And that has caused the enhanced greenhouse effect, which causes more heat to be trapped. So you'll notice with the causes of climate change or global warming, you're always going to use the word increase, more, and enhanced greenhouse effect. What does the impact of global warming have on the weather patterns? Okay. How does it affect the weather patterns? Higher temperature causes heat waves. Rainfall of distribution changes, it varies, leads to increased rainfall in some areas and droughts in other areas, and storms, especially lightning storms, are more frequent because of climate change. And then now, another question they asked, how climate change can result in a higher tide line. So I didn't do geography, so it took me long to understand this. I did geography in primary school. So increased temperature increases the ice caps to melt, and that increases sea levels. And if there's a higher sea level, that will affect the tide. There was a case study, if I'm not mistaken, for this one about the sea turtles. And they asked how they influence the food chain. And there they talk about jellyfish and how the sea turtles and the plankton are all linked. So how sea turtles can influence the food chain. Now you see, the sea turtles eat the jellyfish. So if the sea turtles become extinct, numbers of jellyfish will increase. And then plankton are eaten by jellyfish, which will cause the more jellyfish, less plankton. This is a question you learned in grade 10 about food chains. Okay. And that's how you're supposed to link the question. So I know that question about food chains is done a lot. How a drop in seagull population will influence food security. So there will be an increase in climate change because decaying matter will increase. Oh, now let me explain this to you. This is how they rationalize this answer. The seagulls will die. Okay, no, it's not the seagulls. I can't even remember. A drop in seagull population. Yes, it is the same question. Yes, and I'm interpreting right. How the drop in seagull population, so they start dying. Their matter will increase climate change, which will result in unsuitable or unpredictable weather patterns, which will cause crop to fail. That was so far-fetched. I mean, you're talking about seagulls and then you're linking it to food security. But please, that was one of the, I think it was the Northwest paper where they asked this, the prelim 2019. And I would have never linked them like that. So if they ever ask you, how does a drop in any organism influence food security? Just say more decomposition because the animal is dying, which will cause climate change because methane is released, which will cause unpredictable weather patterns, and the plants can't photosynthesize at 25 degrees and crops will fail. Okay, so that is how you must answer. I just don't think the link is there. It's just too vague for me. Okay, now desertification. We've been talking about desertification a lot. Okay, I just want to see what page we're on. Okay. So desertification is when an area becomes a desert. And why does an area become a desert? I just want to look for my pen. So again, we go back to this roots. I want you to, this is the most important thing I'm ever going to teach you today. And if you don't understand something in your paper, you must write this down. You see, the roots of a plant holds the topsoil. In that topsoil is moisture and nutrients. And that topsoil is what makes the nutrients and the moisture is what makes the plants grow. Now, with, let's say, removing natural vegetation, we remove this plants. And then what happens is there's moisture and nutrients here. And the topsoil, the water, the rain washes away the topsoil. And if the other plants there now don't have moisture and nutrients, less plants grow. And then the plants, less plants can eventually lead to less animals in that area. And if there's less food, animals usually move to another area, and that whole area can become turned into a desert. Now, what is it that can cause desertification? Overgrazing. If you have too much herbivores in an area that's eating all the plants with all the roots and not giving the plant time to restore itself, it can lead to desertification. Okay. And then with desertification, there's it very important. The herbivores, the plants will decrease, the herbivores, and then the other consumers will decrease, move to other areas. And that whole area can eventually become a desert. Okay. So that's the one effect. Another effect you should know, a drought is long periods of time where an area does not receive a lot of water, it receives little or no water. Okay. Again, let's talk about how drought affects organisms. So everything is affected. No plants get water. Plants die. Less plants means less food for the animals and the consumers, all the organisms in the food chain. So it will lead to decrease in biodiversity. It can also lead to desertification. Okay. Floods, something completely different now. Large amounts of time where the land receives a lot of water. Now, what happens is floods can cause damage if you look at to roads and buildings. Okay. Houses. Especially in America, you see they build their houses out of wood. We don't build our houses out of wood, we build our houses out of bricks. So that's fine. Our houses won't get damaged by a flood. But then the plants get washed away. Then the animals get washed away. Everything gets washed away. Now, I was asking my kids this. I wonder if they remember. The first thing that happens when you have a flood is the sewage water comes back up from the toilet. So if you're living in a low area, that's one of the things that can happen when you have a flood. where the sewage water, it's so much water, the sewage water comes back out of the toilet and floods your house. So that's some of the places. Now, your drinking water and your sewage water mixes. And you already know that that's not good. It's going to lead to an increase in waterborne diseases like cholera. So it actually looks like a drought is better than a flood. Floods are bad. It can uproot all the plants, all the animals, kill all the animals. Okay. So floods are really, 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 really bad. Okay. And carbon footprint now. The carbon footprint, you have to know this and you must know it very well. Please remember that the carbon footprint is the measure of the total amount of carbon dioxide emissions. It must be carbon dioxide emissions that is released per individual, per population, per company, per year. This whole definition is important, the whole definition. Now, one of the prelims, which was 2 years ago, they asked this, and the kids only wrote carbon. And do you know they refused to give the marks? They said there's a difference. There is a difference. You're a scientist. There's a difference between carbon and carbon dioxide. Okay. So please make sure you know that definition. It comes out a lot. Okay. And then you have a heavy carbon footprint, where the person releases a large amount, or the area or individual or country releases a large amount of carbon dioxide. And then you have a light carbon footprint, where there's a small amount of carbon dioxide released. Okay. Strategies to reduce the carbon footprint. For one of the important ones, you already know this. I taught you this already. Alternative source of energy or electricity, nuclear power, decrease electricity, plant more trees, public transport. We've already done this. The one we didn't do is reduce and reuse. Okay. Reuse and recycle. Oh, sorry. Reduce and recycle. Sorry. If we reuse and recycle, okay, if we use less fossil fuels, right, for that will actually be fine. But look at today's weather. It's extremely cold. And everybody puts on their heaters. And so the amount of coal that we use, we burn it up faster. Okay, especially in cold weather. So I won't be surprised if next week or the next few days we have load shedding. Okay. Plant more trees. I've done all of this already with you, so I don't want to waste time. Okay. Sorry, man, my Wi-Fi is very slow. My son is writing an exam now. So we've already done, it's called strategies, solutions. If they ask you how you can reduce your carbon footprint.
I'm still stuck on your home screen.
I know. On my home screen.
Yeah.
I know my Wi-Fi is just showing me there's a circle here. So I think it's just something is wrong here. So I'll just leave it. There's it. I think I'm touching. Can you see my screen now, eh?
No, I can't.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think I'm touching the pin and it's the problem. I'm touching the wrong part of the pin. So know all of this. If they ask you how you can actually reduce the amount of carbon dioxide, then you'll talk about use public transport, you plant more trees, you'll use less electricity, you'll switch the geyser off, you'll put the lights off, you'll use solar, you'll use energy saver bulbs. So those things are easy. And then the rest we've already done already. Okay. If you ever get stuck on an answer, please make sure you write education and public awareness. Okay. Education and public awareness. Let me see if I can highlight with my mouse. Okay. Oopsie. So you must be aware of the harms of carbon dioxide. And we educate you on the harmful effects of carbon dioxide and you become aware. If you see all of the things that are now on the news and TV, it educates you on public and gives you public awareness. So they do make you aware. Now, in America, they actually made this material. And it has a very long name. You can always Google it. Extremely long name. And what they've done is this material, they put it into the chimneys of their factories and it absorbs carbon dioxide immediately. So it's like a material, like a sponge kind of a thing that absorbs it. They actually made that type of material. And That's how they're reducing their carbon dioxide emissions. But look, they're such big country. They're such a big country. They release the most amount of carbon dioxide. So you can actually Google it and see what the name is. I just forgot what the name is. Now, it says difference between greenhouse effect and global warming. That was one of the questions in the paper. So everything here that you see in different colors, like a heading and then the answer, that's a metric question. So greenhouse effect is the trapping of the heat by the atmosphere. What is climate change or global warming? Increase in the trapping in the temperature of the atmosphere. Can you see? So yes, greenhouse effect, we already know that the atmosphere traps heat. Global warming is the increase in the temperature of the atmosphere, and it's caused by greenhouse gases, increasing greenhouse gases. The effect of the increase in greenhouse gas leads to enhanced greenhouse effect. Right? Make sure that this word, whenever they talk about greenhouse gases, you always make sure you have this word there, enhanced greenhouse effect. And then always remember, climate change affects the weather patterns. Areas where it's dry will be drier, and areas where it's wet will be wetter. And then it can lead to, of course, decrease in biodiversity because animals lose their habitats. Now, there was a protocol that was signed a long time ago. And the Kyoto Protocol was a protocol that was signed by countries to decrease the amount of carbon dioxide emissions. Japan, China, and America.
The home screen again.
It's still here. Is it there now? Yeah, it will freeze and then it's still there. I wonder why it's doing that. Could only be the Wi-Fi, I think so. Okay, let me just go back. There we are. You can see my screen now?
Yeah, now I can.
Yeah. So America did not sign the Kyoto Protocol. Okay? America, Japan, and China did not sign the Kyoto Protocol. And this protocol was signed so that they could decrease the amount of carbon dioxide. And the reason for that is if America had to change their machines to making them now release less carbon dioxide, it would have cost them more money. If they had to change their machinery, right, it would cost them more money. It would be too expensive. It would have caused a decrease in the economy, and so many people would have lost their jobs. So these are some of the reasons as to why America did not sign the Kyoto Protocol. That came out in 2015. One of the March 2015 paper. I won't forget, I marked that question, and that was one of the questions that came up. Okay. Right. I think it's my Wi-Fi that's so slow. That's so bad, hey? All right. You can see my screen, Attila?
Yeah.
Right. Now we're going to talk about ozone depletion. Now, around the Earth, we have ozone layer. And ozone, as you can see from the notes, it's O3. That you know from science. Now, the ozone layer is destroyed by chlorofluorocarbons. But I saw in one paper, which I'm not sure why I didn't put it in my notes. Okay, it's all slow, very slow. Okay, it's chlorofluorocarbons and it's hydrofluorocarbons. It's CFCs and it's HFCs. So in the one matching, they asked what destroys the ozone. They had CFCs and they had HFCs. It's both of them. Okay. Can you make a note of that somewhere so that you don't forget? Because I didn't put it in this note here. Okay. So it's HFCs and CFCs.
I don't need know the full names, just
yeah, HFCs, but you can call it hydrofluorocarbons. Okay. You'll never know if the examiner goes to that extent. Okay, you got it right. Cool. Now, this is important because it came out in one our Gauteng paper last year. They asked the impact if the ozone layer is damaged. What impact does it have on humans? Now, look at this. The ozone layer protects us from the harmful UV rays. Now, you have UVA rays and you have UVB rays. Now, what happens is if the ozone layer is not actually getting a hole, it is becoming thinner. And the UVB rays, what it does is it destroys a certain type of a white blood cell. And that white blood cell, actually, I'm not sure if you ever learned this. When a person has cancer, there's a type of a white blood cell that identifies the cancer and tries to stop the cancer from spreading. And that UVB rays that is now allowed to enter and come into the Earth's atmosphere destroys that white blood cell. And that, as a result, what is on the increase? Skin cancer is increasing. Okay. And one of those, so skin cancer is increasing. It's leading to a decrease in our immune system. And that's very, very serious for us. Look at us now. Some people have weak immune systems, and it has led to increase in skin cancer. It also has led to some damage in the eyes as well, because the UV rays can damage the eyes, can cause more cataracts. But actually, because you're in the sun a lot, it's not actually like a cataract, it's a fat layer that grows over your eyes to protect you. And only people in Australia and South Africa get it. It's called a pterygium. And you can actually see it when you go for an eye test. The doctor shows you the fat layer over your eyes. So these are some of the consequences of the ozone layer becoming thinner. Now, let me tell you what the problem is. CFCs last for 100 years in the atmosphere. So it doesn't matter now if we're making the change now. The CFCs are already lasting in the atmosphere for 100 years. So whatever we released 100 years ago, still damaging the ozone layer. Then there's something called the Montreal Protocol. The Montreal Protocol was signed to make sure to restrict the amount of CFCs. And in that way, make all the aerosol cans ozone friendly. All our aerosol cans are ozone friendly here in South Africa. Okay. In the past, we used to have air cons, refrigerators that used to release CFCs. Now, all our air cons, our fridges are ozone friendly, and that is because of the Montreal Protocol. So remember, Montreal Protocol to decrease CFCs. Kyoto Protocol, carbon dioxide. Right. Write that down somewhere too quickly. Montreal Protocol.
Montreal
Protocol, yes, is to decrease the amount of CFCs or make aerosol cans ozone friendly.
and Kyoto is just carbon dioxide.
Is decrease the carbon dioxide.
Okay, I got it.
All right. So just remember that's the best way to remember. So that's the Montreal Protocol. Right. So now we've done the first section. We've done the first part, which is called, let's go back, atmosphere and climate change. The first part, see, atmosphere and climate change. You've just done it. There's 4 parts here. So also this section, the water availability part, is also new information that you're going to learn. Okay. Here we are. There we are, water availability. Okay, on page 8. Now, water availability is the amount of water available to all South Africans. Now, water is very, very scarce. We live in a semi-arid area, meaning we hardly get a lot of water. Okay, and we get very, very little water rainfall per year. Okay, we have, before we even talk about the different types of water how we get our water, we have surface water, which is 77%, groundwater 9%, and reused water is 14%. Reused water is water that's reused from your sewage or from your household water, your gray water, right? So there we are. Surface water found on the surface in rivers, dams, wetlands, lakes. Groundwater, it's a water that's found in an aquifer. And then reused water is water that comes, your gray water. You see, gray water is water that you use from your bath, your shower, your washing machine, your dishwasher, your kitchen. It's reused water. Okay. Now, a dam is a man-made barrier across a river. So what has happened is you find natural rivers that are naturally formed, and then we come and we build a dam, which is a barrier, and we separate some of the water and we hold some of the water back. Okay. And what are some of the advantages of a dam? Okay. It can be used for a natural habitat, right? The bottom part of the river, if there was no dam, could flood easily. Okay, we want to capture water, store more water, and then very important, dams also generate hydroelectricity. Okay, so there's some of the advantages. Now look at the disadvantages. I'm going to teach you this here at the bottom. It actually came out in a paper in 2015. Disadvantages of dams. If I'm putting a barrier, a man-made barrier in a river, habitats are destroyed, loss of biodiversity. When floodgates open, you know the floodgates, the sluice gates, when it opens, that pressure is so great it washes away anything in its way. Okay? The organism down the stream by the river where the dam was, there's less water. And if because all the water's in the dam now, then of course less water at the bottom of the dam downstream, it will lead to loss in biodiversity. Another thing I want you to remember, please, 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 this is here. The dam prevents migration of fish. And if they can't migrate, they can't reproduce, it will decrease biodiversity. When you build the wall of the dam, pollution takes place, which can decrease biodiversity. If I'm not mistaken, that was a question that was asked last year. And I took my answer from these notes here. Disadvantages here and some of this here. Okay, so please make sure disadvantages and advantages of dams, they love to ask you. Okay, now destruction of a wetland. Now, destruction of a wetland is a wetland that is area that's covered with water for most of the part of the year. Now, it's like a marsh. So when you walk in this wetland, it's like wet, wet, wet. The soil is wet, wet, wet. But what you need to know is there's a special type of a reed that grows along the edges of this wetland. And the reeds, the roots, as water flows into this wetland, the reeds filter out the water. So the water that leaves this wetland is already purified. It's cleaned. It has very little pollutants. Okay. And because these reeds slow down the flow of water, it can decrease flooding and soil erosion. Okay. Very, very important. You have a special part of the ground, of the water table that stores water. The wetland recharges this groundwater, meaning it becomes empty and it can recharge it. I will talk to you more when I do the cover now. So these are the ecological benefits of a wetland. But unfortunately, we have destroyed our wetland for recreation, for fishing, for tourism. And one of them, we actually took all our alien plants and we pushed them there. And because of that, after we didn't know about the wetlands and how important they were. So what happened is we destroyed the wetlands. We had 9 in South Africa. We only have 2 now, and the 2 are protected by law. Okay, St. Lucia is one of them. Right, most of them are destroyed. We destroyed them. Okay, we destroyed them for various different things, to build houses, factories, dams, malls, put alien plants there. So, and unfortunately, we did not know the value of this wetland. You see, the wetlands have a great biodiversity. We didn't know this. And because we've destroyed some of our wetlands, some of the organisms that used to be there have moved away or have become critically endangered. And so you can see we were ignorant. We did not know the value of a wetland. Okay, now, poor farming practices. Okay, let me just see how much is left here. I don't want you to fall asleep. Okay. This is still exciting. I still love teaching this part here. This is very, very important, especially the first two parts. After the first two parts, it becomes monotonous. It becomes, we talk about the same things over and over and over. Now, poor farming practices, if I want to draw a picture here, okay, plowing downhill. I think everything's slow today. Now, if I'm plowing downhill, it means you're making lines and then you plant your seeds. Right now, imagine you plant your seeds and then you water your crop. Okay, plowing downhill is not very good. All this soil that you have on the top could run downwards, as well as all the water that you're now spraying on this contour. It can go downwards. All right, it can run downwards. So we should never plow downhill. Okay, we should plow along the slopes of a hill, along it, not downwards. Right, that's a poor farming practice. Another one is, in this country, most of our water is wasted by irrigation, which is unfortunately watering our crops. Okay, and I'm not sure if you even notice when you see people planting their watering their crops, they have their sprinklers high up in the air. Half of that water gets evaporated. They should actually have a drip irrigation where the sprinklers go right into the ground and deliver the water right to the ground, not this inefficient sprinkler irrigation. It just wastes too much of water. So we waste a lot of water. Number one in this country is irrigation wastage. That's how we waste water. And then unfortunately, the second one is we use pesticides and fertilizers. And you remember, to get rid of the fertilizers and pesticides in the water, we have to use a lot of water, a lot of money to purify that water. Okay. So sometimes also another problem with wastage is the equipment could be leaking. And if you notice, some of these farmers, they water their crop at the hottest time of the year. And high up, the pressures are too high. So it can cause wastage of water. Solutions, you can have a drip irrigation, low pressure, right? You can have, you only water towards the evening when there's less evaporation. So these are the solutions, okay? Another problem of water availability is overgrazing. But this part we've already done. It leads to habitat destruction. Overgrazing is when you use animals and they eat all the grass. And eventually what happens? The soil is eroded and water runs off, and water is also wasted. So overgrazing can also lead to water wastage. Okay. And then if there's no water there, if there's no plants there, if there's no animals there, very important, loss of biodiversity. Okay. Droughts and floods, we already know. A drought and a flood, if it becomes too hot, climate change causes unpredictable weather patterns. So in some areas it becomes drier, some areas become wetter. And the drought areas, obviously what's going to happen? Plants die. Plants die, no topsoil with moisture and nutrients. The plants die, which will cause the animals to be affected, and that can lead to desertification. Okay. And another very important thing, as the plants die, it affects the trophic levels in the food chain, so organisms die as well. What else affects amount of water? Alien plants. Now, huh? I can't hear. Okay, ask Daddy to give you his one. Okay, Tella, I'm just going to swap. I'm just quickly going to call my husband to swap my internet because my son's busy writing and he's saying I'm slowing the internet. Okay, just give me 1 minute. Yes. Come swap the internet for me. Daniel says it's too slow. He can't do it. It's really bad. Even with Daniel, you can also. Ethan, you can. swap it for me quickly? Even for me, it's very slow. It's very bad. Just want to pick this child's.
It's not picking up here in the room.
Not picking up in the room.
Wait, is it?
It's coming.
Mm.
Okay. Okay. You still there, Tilla? Okay, you're still there. Close the door, please. Yeah, no, my son's writing and I was busy messing up his test. And you saw internet was very bad today, even with us. Let's hope now it's better. So we're talking about alien plants. Now, here, this is extremely important. Alien plants are also known as exotic plants. And alien plants are plants that are brought here by mistake because they looked nice. They were brought here, some of them are brought by mistake on your jackets when you're traveling from one country to another, deliberately because it looked nice. So nobody at all, we didn't know the effect of these alien plants. And as a result, what has happened is those plants, because there's no invaders, there's none of their invaders or pests in this area, they have flourished. And alien plants, their roots grow even longer than our normal indigenous trees. Indigenous trees are trees that are found naturally in an area. And because of that, their roots grow longer and they get more of the water. And they outcompete our indigenous plants and trees. And that's how our plants and trees are becoming extinct, because of these exotic or alien plants. These plants and trees grow even taller. So they get more of the sunlight. Their flowers are more brightly colored, so they get all the pollinators. So unfortunately, we made a mistake and now we are paying for it. And these plants are really, really, really outcompeting. You must always say, when it comes to alien plants, they're outcompeting our indigenous plants. An indigenous plant is a plant that's found naturally in an area. Okay. And we'll talk about the water table now, and I'll teach you when it comes to the aquifer. I hope it's soon. Yeah, it is soon. How they actually deplete the water table and the aquifer. Okay. So this is a very, very, very big problem in our country, is the alien plants. Now, I'm not sure, have you ever been to the Hartbeespoort Dam? Have you seen it?
Yeah.
And have you seen that the Hartbeespoort Dam is actually, most of the organisms are becoming extinct? And it is, what has happened is, there is a water hyacinth. It's an alien plant. And this plant was brought in here by mistake. And it's beautiful. It has a purple flower. And this water hyacinth, it reproduces, it doubles it doubles in number or size every 2 weeks. And this water hyacinth has actually covered the entire surface of the Hartbeespoort Dam. And it doesn't allow sunlight to go to the plants, so the plants die. There's no oxygen there, all the fish die. And all the organisms are decomposing. So it's this alien plant that has caused most of the extinction of those organisms in that dam. And also with boating, most people love to boat there. So what they do is they take boats and they push the water hyacinth away to try to allow some sunlight, but it doubles and doubles. All you need is somebody to go in there and just collect all the water hyacinth. And we brought it by mistake. And look at our problem. The jacaranda tree is Pretoria's tree. It's an alien tree. Do you know that? Pretoria, we have a shortage of water because of those jacaranda. Their roots grow deep into the water table and they're using up water that we could use. Okay. So these are very serious things when it comes to alien plants. Always make sure you end off your answer by saying they outcompete our natural indigenous plants. Okay. So there's another eucalyptus tree that also is depleting the water table. Now we're going to talk about boreholes. Now, do you guys have a borehole in your house?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I don't think so. Okay. And a borehole, now let's go. I want to talk to you about the aquifer. The aquifer is a special type of a rock. See, it says they're permeable rock. It is rock that water flows to. So what happens is a borehole drills to the bottom and gets to the aquifer, and it draws water from this rock. This rock that's saturated, filled with water, and the borehole draws all this water from this rock. And then when the water is removed from the rock, rain will come and recharge this rock. Just like a wetland. Remember I told you the wetland recharges the groundwater? The wetland can fill this aquifer with more water. So boreholes get water from the aquifer. Now you see these alien plants, their roots grow down. So they reach the aquifer and they draw up water from here. And we need this water. This is water we could be using. Okay. Aquifer is saturated rock with water. It's a permeable rock that is filled with water. Okay. And just want to see, one of the kids is sending me a breakdown of the paper. Okay, so then the aquifer, so it's permeable rock that's saturated with water, and it forms part of your water table. And now alien plants, their roots reach this water table. Our plants can't reach, their roots can't reach. And they draw all, the alien plants use all this water from this water table, which is water that we could be using. Okay, so that is now water availability. What affects the amount of water available to everybody? Now, our country, we are one of the countries, because water is a human right. Some of our water, I think 10 kiloliters of water is free. Okay, because everybody has access to clean water. And then they start charging you per liter how much you use. Okay, so we're one of the good countries that actually we give some water for free. But however, from 2015, we're in a drought. Okay, and one of the ways in which we waste water, now we're looking at wastage of water. Of course, domestic use. Your leaking pipes, your toilets, washing your machines, filling the bath, brushing your teeth with water running, watering your garden at the hottest time of the day, washing your car with a hose instead of a bucket, children playing with water. So these are some of the ways in which we waste water. Agriculture, you already know. We waste a lot of water with irrigation, how we water our crop. And then, unfortunately, we wasted a lot of water with pollution. Now, pesticides and fertilizers have also damaged and caused a lot of eutrophication. Okay? Eutrophication is a similar thing to what happens with sewage as well. Please know that sewage and fertilizers and pesticides, they have the same effect. Okay? Sewage and fertilizers and pesticides both have nitrates and phosphates. So when they go into the water, they're actually going to cause, if there's algae, so I'm going to draw a little picture here. So, in all water there's algae. So sewage will go into this water, fertilizers, pesticides. They have nitrates and nitrates and phosphates. Sewage also has nitrates and phosphates. What these nitrates and phosphates do is called this algae to bloom, and it covers the entire surface of the water. So in here, if there was plants, okay, the algae covers the water, and the sunlight can't reach the plant, and the plant dies. And that plant was responsible for oxygen in the atmosphere, in the water. So there's no oxygen, and all the fish and all the organisms die. And because everything has died, decomposing bacteria stays in here, and then that area is called eutrophication. So sewage and fertilizers and pesticides cause eutrophication. Okay, and that is water that we can actually drink. Do you know how many rivers, dams, and lakes in South Africa we have damaged and destroyed by eutrophication? Okay, all we need is people to just remove that algae, and that will be cleared up, and we will have a lot of water to drink. We won't be in a drought anymore. Okay, and then they ask you, very careful, you must be very careful. Steps taken by municipality. And municipalities, I know, they reduce the pressure in the pipes. When they reduce the pressure, you use less water. And that helps because less pressure will cause you to waste, especially in the showers. They can also form partnerships with plumbers to repair all the leaks, because sometimes you see lots and lots of water being wasted, right? And then another thing they've done is water is expensive, so they charge you more for water. If they charge you more for water, then you actually waste less and you save more. Okay, there we are. It's 6 kiloliters of water free per month. Okay, and then they also can have some water restrictions, right? Which is they limit the amount of water that you use. Like in Cape Town, when they had that water shortage, do you know they were only allowed? I think they only gave them 10 liters of water per week. So they had to learn to use that water for washing, for cleaning, for cooking, for everything, and it was actually very, very bad. And Cape Town, when they went to that drought, to that water shortage, is because they wasted all their water. Okay, that is why they only were affected by the drought, that major water restrictions that they had. Now we're looking at water quality. We are looking at what affects the quality of water. Now, quality is, will it be safe enough for us to drink the water? Okay. You still okay, Tilla?
I'm fine.
Okay, good. All right. Now, quality of water. It's the biological, chemical, physical, and aesthetic. Aesthetic is how it looks, the properties of water, so that it's safe for us to drink and to sustain life. Okay, and water is extremely important. All right. Now, how can water? This is a question in one of the papers. How water found in rivers, lakes, and dams are polluted? Of course, by pathogens, polluted by us, fertilizer, feces, harmful chemicals, by mining, all of that. Okay, factors that influence water quality. Now, you just did this now. Eutrophication and algal bloom. You just learned that raw sewage, fertilizers also cause eutrophication. Yeah, this was a question in the exam where they asked how sewage causes eutrophication. Look, sewage contains the nutrients that stimulate algal bloom, covers the surface of the water, blocks sunlight, plants die. Oxygen content reduced because of less photosynthesis. And then you talk about how all the other organisms, all the fish and all the other organisms die as well. Okay, how it affects the food chain. This is the grade 10 answer. If the plants die, remember, they are the first trophic level in a food chain. All the organisms that depend on the plants will die. And the plants are important. They're the first trophic level in the food chain. So the length of the food chain will obviously decrease because everything depends on the plant. And if the plant dies, nothing will survive. So you just say the length of the food chain will decrease. Now, some organisms will have too much food, while some will have no food. And let me tell you something about nature. Animals will just not die because they don't have food. They will either move to other areas and put pressure on those ecosystems, or they can even change their diet. Okay, so migration, they won't necessarily die. They'll change their food source. Just remember that, right? Okay, so that's now raw sewage. Besides the fact that raw sewage can cause eutrophication, think about all the diseases it can cause. It can cause cholera, right? It can cause typhoid fever, maybe dysentery, and then people won't want to go into those waters, right? And they won't want to obviously get infected, and they won't drink of that. They won't drink from that water. Okay, I'm not sure if you remember, a long time ago there was this outbreak of cholera, and it got very, very bad. A lot of people died, and then just after that, a few months later, the Natal people, because that's where it was affected a lot. The people were affected a lot. They came up with the vaccine. So there is a vaccine for cholera. Okay, so here they talk about algal bloom again. Here they talk about raw sewage. So remember, raw sewage, fertilizers, and pesticides have the same effect, eutrophication. Okay, so just remember that question. It will cause the algae to bloom, covers the water, no photosynthesis. No photosynthesis, no oxygen for the plant dies. Fish die. All the organisms that need oxygen die. Bacteria accumulate. And eventually all the oxygen will decrease. And that's called eutrophication. Can we drink that water? Is the quality of the water good for us to drink? No, there's fish everywhere. There's fish, there's decomposition bacteria, there's rotten plants, so it's not good for water consumption. So it decreases the water quality. Okay. Now, so that is now eutrophication, fertilizers, pesticides. Thermal pollution, how it reduces water quality. Now, thermal pollution comes from the word hot, heat. Certain industries release hot water. Now, there's two things I need to teach you, especially mines. Mines are always found near a place where there's a river or dam or water source. So they can actually dump their water into those waters. They're hot water. They're hot waste. And sometimes the temperature of the water is as high as 47 degrees. Okay. Now, unfortunately, when the water is hot, there is less oxygen. When the hot water hits the normal natural water in the river or lake, it decreases the amount of oxygen. Okay, so immediately, if it lowers the amount of oxygen, less organisms will die. The other thing is, and that's number C, the heat increases the metabolism of certain organisms so that they want to eat so much more that they eat all the food and they eventually die. So that's how hot water affects organisms, right? Hot water decreases the amount of dissolved oxygen and increases the metabolism, so the organisms eat so fast and then they die. Okay, so then thermal pollution reduces the quality of water because the organisms die and all the oxygen is decreased and they die. Okay, so all of this, you're still going to learn a lot of new information. Okay, mining. Now, when miners mine, there's a certain type of a rock that they expose. It's called pyrite. Pyrite is a sulfur-bearing rock. And then this rock is exposed. Then what happens is water washes over this rock and it forms sulfuric acid. Now, you know sulfuric acid is extremely, extremely acidic. And then this water washes away into our normal drinking water. And what will happen if we drink this water? We'll die. Plants will die, animals die, humans will die. And that's called acid mine drainage. I'm sure you must have heard of it. There was one time in Johannesburg a long time ago where they had acid mine drainage. The acid can also dissolve very, very strong metals that come from rock as well. Okay, so basically, if that acid water gets into the water, it will pollute the water. The plants absorb this water, the plants will die. And if we drink that water, we will die. So it's very, very serious. And that's from mining. And you know, you can never tell the difference between sulfuric acid and water, right? Not as a plant, not as an animal, not as a human. We don't even know this, okay? One of the questions in the exam was how to prevent heavy metals from polluting water sources. And what they do, what am I trying to do now? I'm increasing awareness. Provide incentives. Provide incentives to companies to not release their to make sure that their mining takes place properly and their water does not flow over rocks. Okay, and that water doesn't mix with drinking water. Reduce industries such as mining industries. Prevent the release of metals in water, and penalties. They must have serious, serious fines. There was this lovely question. I couldn't remember which paper. I still haven't found it. Why humans have most of heavy metals in their systems. Now, with metals like mercury, cadmium, lead, it accumulates in the trophic level. So let's say it's absorbed by a plant. Then the animal that eats a plant, that heavy metal will accumulate in that herbivore. Then the carnivore eats that herbivore, and that amount of heavy metal will accumulate. We are at the top of the food chain. And if we eat the most amount of freshwater organisms, if they have heavy metals, then it accumulates. It's called bioaccumulation. So heavy metals accumulate in the food chain. From producers, it moves up in the food chain. And the organism always at the end at the food chain, higher up in the food chain, is the one that will have the most amount of heavy metals. And that's called bioaccumulation. Okay. Now, acid mine water, of course, it affects infrastructure. If it's acid actually eats away the iron. Okay, if it eats away iron in buildings, look, it can cause weakening of bridges and buildings. Okay, how can it affect agriculture? pH of water will drop, soil will drop. All those organisms and bacteria that live in the soil will die, which will decrease the crop yield or increase the depth of the crop. Okay. So we're almost there, don't worry. We're almost there at the end with exciting work. Hopefully I can finish the section, Tella. I'll be very happy if I could finish the section today. I'm sure you will too. Alien plants now. Alien plants, we already know how they affect the quality of water. Alien plants, remember, they are known as alien or exotic. They are not indigenous. They outcompete our indigenous species. And they are in this new environment. They have no natural predators. So they were brought you accidentally or deliberately. They have no natural predators or pathogens, and they use up all the water, leaving little water for our crop. Now, there's the water hyacinth. I told you about the Hartbeespoort Dam already. And it's causing a lot of eutrophication. In fact, they told us at the end of 2020, all the organisms in that Hartbeespoort Dam is going to be extinct. Okay. And that's because of that alien plant. Okay. And because now when you look at alien plants and you look at all the fish that are dying there, they're accumulating there, the decomposing bacteria, that is a dam. We're in a 5-year drought, and that dam could supply a lot of water to everybody. But unfortunately, everything dead, it has accumulated and has affected and decreased the quality of the water. Okay. Well, one of the other things that affect the quality of water is pollution. And how do we pollute the water? Domestic use, yes. From our sewage, washing powders, all of our household activities. Industrial purposes, obviously with the lead and the mercury. Agriculture, with fertilizer and pesticides that run it off into the water. Okay. Now, we should increase the quality of our water by purifying our water and recycling our water. So if we purify all this water, okay, and we purify them faster, and we recycle water. If we recycle our grey water, okay, if we recycle some of our sewage water as well properly, okay, then we can also increase the amount of water available. Okay, for example, all the chemicals that are in these rivers, dams, and lakes, we can treat them, we can kill all the germs, we can increase the amount of water available. Okay, we can clean the water, we said that, right? We can desalinate seawater. That's very expensive. That's one of the solutions. But remove the salt from the water, it takes a lot of electricity as well. And at home, we can decrease the amount of clean municipal water used. We can rather use grey water. So they're saying reuse your grey water to wash your car. Use your grey water to water your plants. Okay, so you can reuse your grey water. And it's cheaper, right, than finding water from natural sources. It's really easy for us to reduce the amount of water we use, conserve water, right? Clean the water before it goes into the environment, right? Desalinization of seawater, which will also increase water for us, and then use grey water. That's what we can do. How can we also increase water availability? These are some strategies. Okay, prevent destruction of wetlands. And I think for this one, they wanted statement and reason. Prevent destruction of wetlands to improve the amount of water and quality water available. Fix leaking pipes. Yes, so we'll waste less. Incentive for families to save. If you provide incentives, people will be encouraged to save more. Reduce pressure, we reduce wastage. Educate people on how to save water. Encourage good farming practices to prevent contamination by fertilizers, pesticides. Use boreholes, aquifers, tanks, so increase water availability. Desalinate seawater to make more water available. Penalize people who are using too much water so they don't waste. Remove alien plants so that there's more water that reaches dams. Okay. And then another question they asked in the exam, the need for processed and fresh food. How it influences water quality. So you see, okay, after the water is used for industrial processes, water may contain heavy metal and oil. So this is after the industrial process, and that will affect quality of water. So if there's oil in the water, if there's heavy metals, no organism can survive and drink that water. Okay, so the need for fresh, how it influences the quality of water. How is your processed food made? by these industrial purposes or processes, and it decreases the quality of water. You want more fresh water, food, you use pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers that cause eutrophication, and that cause an increase in algal bloom, and that can decrease the amount of eutrophication. Again, thermal pollution, certain factories release hot water into the from industries, decreases the amount of oxygen, and all organisms will die. Right. So that is now water availability and water quality. Okay. Not too bad. Is it 31 pages or 34 pages? Let's see quickly. So we can just have a breather. We just got a few minutes left. I've been talking a lot and you've been listening a lot too. Thirty-four pages. Okay, so what we just did now, we can actually, it's very important. The climate change, the water quality and availability is very important. Okay, so very important. This is another part. It's food security. It's also a part that comes out a lot, and you're going to notice that it's a repeat of everything that we did. Okay, so I'll quickly revise all the work that we've done so far. Now, food security is a big thing. They ask for this definition all the time. So it refers to the access by all people at all times to enough, adequate, safe, and nutritious food for a healthy and productive life. This is a definition that I actually made up myself by combining everything. Okay, and this is a very important definition. Now, food security. So every person in South Africa must have access to food, enough food at all times for a healthy, productive life. And it must be safe, nutritious food. And you already know that doesn't happen. Okay. And we got a problem. And one of the things that are affecting food security is the rate at which we are growing. So we are growing more and more and more. And by us growing more and more and more, what's happening is the more people grow, what's the first thing we need to do? Is we need to feed them. And the more they grow, the more food they need. So we remove natural vegetation, overgrazing occurs, all of that will occur. So one of the biggest things that affects everything that we experience, every human impact on the environment, it's caused by human population growth. Okay. And then here they ask why we're growing. The more we advance and the more food we make for people, the more they reproduce. Then we have advanced medical care, then they live longer. Then they put more demands on food, water, and other resources. We affect every food chain because we're at the top of the food chain. Then we need transport, then we need buildings, so we need all of that. And that's how a human population growth affects food security. Now, droughts and floods. The more we are, the more electricity we need. So then more demands on fossil fuels. What will we cause? Climate change. So we cause droughts in certain area, floods in certain area. Droughts, less plants grow because there's less water. Okay? Floods, sewage water, drinking water mixes, plants get washed away, animals get washed away. Our food gets washed away. So that's how floods and droughts affect food security. Rainfall, there's unpredictable rainfall, right? Then areas where there's drier, area where it's wetter, it still affects the crops. Okay, the topsoil is washed away. And remember I told you the nutrients in the water is washed away, the soil can't grow, the crop can't grow, decreases food security. Okay. The next one is also important. Alien plants and the reduction of agricultural land. Alien plants now can take land and grow on land that we could be using to grow our crops. Okay, so they take up land that we could be growing our cash crops. Their roots absorb all the water, and they use water that our indigenous crops could use, and they decrease and outcompete our indigenous crops. And that's how our crops, like our potatoes and our millies, decrease. They decrease our crop yield. Okay, so that's how they're affecting the food security in agricultural land. Loss of wild varieties. This is also important. Now, a wild variety is a variety of plants. So we're on page 21. Okay, we just got, I think, a few more left. Loss of wild varieties. Now, already you know with evolution, you need many wild varieties of crop. Okay, if you have one similar plant, all the plants that are similar, all you need is one disease to come and wipe them all out. And that's what happened in the past. We inbreed our chicken, as you know, and we had avian flu, and all the chicken died. And we had to start importing our chicken. We have all the meat the same. And then we had one disease, foot and mouth disease, that wiped them all out. It all happened at the same time, meat and chicken. Let's ask your mom, I think a few years ago. Then we started importing our meat. And then our plants. We make them all the same. They're not genetics, no variety. And so all you need is one disease and they wipe them all out. And one pest to affect them all. If there's a wild variety of the crops, then at least there could be some variation and some organisms that will survive in these instances where they're affected by a pest or a disease. Okay, but now we're making them all the same. We just need one disease to wipe them all out. One disease, one pest, and that's not good. Okay, now, which is good for us, they're trying to promote us to plant wild varieties. Because if we plant wild varieties, it's better because then they won't be susceptible. Some of them can be resistant to diseases. Okay. Now, right now in South Africa, especially in our National Botanical Gardens, we have our own seed bank where we are collecting the seeds of many, many different plants. And especially our cash crop. And we're collecting them in the hundreds and thousands. So if they become extinct, we still got them. I'm not sure if you've ever seen what my school looks like. But we have Margaret Roberts. She was one of the famous gardeners and horticulturalists. She died, and she was an old girl. So she left money for them to make a Margaret Roberts garden in our school. And in the benches that she's donated are seed banks. So she gives the grade 8 seeds, and they store it away for 5 years. And after 5 years, they get the seeds and they will grow it anywhere they want to in the school or anywhere at home. And by doing that, she's actually increasing the amount of plants and trees that are grown. Okay, so there is big one in Germany, the Global Seed Vault. There is one. Okay, now, because we're trying to preserve all our wild variety of plants. If the climate change destroys them, then we have them, especially our food. If we have our food dies, then we have many seeds. We can always clone them or we can actually grow them. Right? Now, genetically engineered foods. Genetically engineered foods are GMOs. Okay, we've done this also when we did genetics. Now, what we do is we insert a desirable gene from one organism and put it into another. And most of the time, we make our plants drought resistant, or we can make them nutritious, or we can make them increase yield. Okay, we can improve taste as well, nutritional value, appearance, all of this. We now make our seeds drought resistant because we're in the 5-year drought. Okay, so there's it here. Higher yield, resistant to pests or crop yield, higher yields, more food, increased nutrients, more nutritional value, increased resistance to cold. The crops can grow in any area. Now, what advantages? Now, this is in purple. I took it from a past paper. More and better food can be produced, so bigger fruit, bigger vegetables. We can make them, we can use less insecticides, right? So it can be environment better in the environment and it won't affect the food chains. Disadvantages? Here we go. Long-term unknown health side effect. They say the disadvantage of using GMOs is allergies. So apparently the amount of allergies in people have actually increased because of GMOs. Okay. See, 2014, they banned a certain modified maize because of the allergic reaction people showed consuming it. Other answers against GMOs, against religious objections: human beings are playing God, unnatural, can lead to unknown health side effect, decreases biodiversity, gene pool by planting one crop, can lead for food monopolies. Food monopolies, one company who modifies the seeds, they can sell them to anyone they want to at the price that they want to. Okay. Now we're looking at what else that affects food security. Food wastage. Food wastage. And food wastage occurs when you're storing the food, producing the food, processing the food. So it could occur in any three of those places. And it also, unfortunately, includes food that you don't eat and you throw away. Okay. Now, poor harvesting techniques, inadequate storage, right? Packaging, also transport facilities. And if you don't store them properly, in fact, if you don't harvest them properly, from there, you can damage, you lose money. Then you put it in trucks that don't have proper fridges. There already, then the food goes off. Then the fridges in the shops don't store the vegetables and fruits, and then you lose your food. Food is wasted, right? Now, this was a question from the paper. How can food wastage contribute to loss of energy and global warming? That energy to produce and transport the food. So now you are using petrol or gas or diesel, and now the food is wasted. So all that fossil fuels that you used also was wasted. Then the food gets decomposed, and all of that, the transporting of the from a truck, the decomposition all releases greenhouse gases, and it leads to enhanced greenhouse effect. Actually, a very nice question. How to decrease wastage? This is a question that comes out a lot. You only buy what you need. You give to others what you don't need instead of throwing. Educate people about efficient farming methods. Improve storage facilities in trucks, in shops, and then you improve the shelf life of food. Okay. So then they genetically modify plants so they last longer on the shelf. All right. Another thing that decreases food security is monoculture. You plant the same crop over and over, year after year. And that depletes the nutrients and the water from the soil. How do you replenish the nutrients? You put fertilizer. Okay. But because you're planting the same crop over and over and over, all it needs is that will lead to an increase in pests. And one pest will come and could possibly wipe out your crops, decrease crop yield. But then to prevent that, you spray a pesticide. And the pesticides can cause eventually eutrophication. Your soil has no nutrients, so you put fertilizers. That can also lead to eutrophication. So look at the negative effects of monoculture. Depletes nutrients on the same plot of land. Okay, this will be decrease in the yield, please. Okay, decrease in the yield, increase in pests, soil erosion, decrease in biodiversity. Okay. Okay. I'm quickly going to change that. Okay. I'll just remember. Tala, will you remember? Page 22. Page 22, just right there, leads to decrease in yield, crop yield.
Okay.
All right, you got it. Right. Overgrazing and loss of topsoil also leads to food wastage, decreases in food security. So topsoil, contains a lot of nutrients and moisture. They overgraze in that area. There's no roots of the plant. Topsoil is removed, and eventually no plants there, no animals there. It leads to desertification. What's a solution to overgrazing and monoculture? There we go. Crop rotation. And you rotate the crop with a legume. Now, legumes have root nodule bacteria. Now, you learned this already in grade 10. Root nodule bacteria, they are bacteria that can convert nitrogen into nitrates. And when there's no more nitrates, the land is fertile. So these nodule bacteria are already in the roots. So if you rotate the crop with the legume, the next year on the side where the legumes were, there'll be more nitrates and you will increase the crop yield. So for example, if I'm drawing this, right? One half you do your potatoes, one half beans. Okay. The legumes are here, it makes the soil a lot of nutrients. And then the next year you swap over. Okay, and then you plant beans here. But you're making your soil, you're making them fertile again. And you always rotate your crop with a legume because the legumes have root nodule bacteria. Okay, so crop rotation is our solution to monoculture. And that's something we should have learned in grade 10, something very, very big. And it's always crop rotation with a legume. The use of fertilizers, yes. Fertilizers, too much fertilizers. Now I want to teach you something very important. When a farmer is using fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, that money comes from him. So he has to make the food more expensive to accumulate, to make up for this price of using the fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides. So it increases the price, and that could decrease food security because the poor consumer can't afford it. It can also increase yield because more fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides increase the yield. So please make sure that this you will listen to and you'll write down again. We already know fertilizers leads to eutrophication, which will obviously eventually affect all the organisms in an area. Now, this was one of the essay questions. Okay, eutrophication, if it damages the fish, kills the fish, no fish, less food, decreases food security. There's it there out there. Fertilizer is expensive, reduces access to poor consumers. There we are. Then they asked the 1 year how phosphates cause eutrophication. Phosphates and nitrates are the two that cause eutrophication because they cause algal bloom, deplete the amount of oxygen in the water, and they kill everything. The fish die, the organisms die. Okay. Few more minutes, 15 minutes, Stella, 15 minutes, and then we're done. I can hear you tired. You want a 5-minute break to go have some water quickly? Attila?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, just 5 minutes. Yeah, I also want to get some water. Just few minutes. Maybe you also have to go to the bathroom because we're sitting for 1 hour, 45 minutes straight. Just give you a full minute break quickly.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, all right. So you had about 10 minutes left. Okay, and I saw we were busy on page, we're like on page 24. So then we only have about 10 or less than 10 pages on Sunday to finish off with this work, and that will be good. Now, we're talking about use of pesticides. Remember, monoculture leads to planting the same crop over and over, leads to an increase in pest. Okay, then we spray pesticides, and then pesticides can cause eutrophication, right? And it can also affect the food chain. Now, what I need to tell you is pesticides can also accumulate in the food chain. DDT is, I already know from malaria, is a pesticide to kill the malaria mosquito. And DDT has also been known to accumulate from the water when the plants absorb them and through the food chain. And because eagles are the end of the food chain, the eagles have absorbed the most amount of DDT in their body, and the eggs that they're laying, the shells are extremely, extremely thin, and this is affecting their babies, and that's why they are becoming extinct. And this accumulation of pesticide in the food chain is known as bioaccumulation. Okay. Pesticides can also go into the water and kill organisms, right? It also has been known, look, pesticides have been known to cause many conditions in babies, in humans. Okay. And it can kill many, we use them in large amounts and we kill the organisms. Now, there's the other one. Pesticides are expensive. That cost the farmer will then include it in the price of the food, and then the poor consumers cannot afford it and they might die. Possible solutions to pesticides is rather biological control, right? Another way to rather kill the pest in another way by bringing another predator, right? And that should increase food security. Okay. Now, one question they asked is how changes in weather patterns affect food security? Of course, if it's going to changes rainfall pattern, droughts in certain area, floods in certain area. The droughts will lead to desertification. Then you have increased flooding. Then you can also have with the rainfall, you can have wildfires. All of that increases in the soil erosion. Then there's less crop, less food for the livestock. Remember, less crop, less food for livestock, and that will decrease biodiversity and decrease food security. Okay, and because of the decrease in food, food becomes expensive and the poor consumer cannot afford the food. And then the Gauteng prelim essay. Food security refers to access by all people at all times. So they wanted a definition of food security. Access by all people at all times to adequate, safe, nutritious food for a healthy, productive life. How poor farming practices affect food security. So you talk about monoculture. Growing one crop over and over depletes the nutrients and the water, and it will decrease the quality of the topsoil. So that's monoculture. Overgrazing. You overgraze the vegetation, there's no plants, the cattle will die, and if there's less food for cattle, it will decrease food security. Poor water management. If we waste a lot of water for irrigation, we decrease crop production. Pest control, if we use pesticides and herbicides, it's expensive. It can increase the cost of the food and the poor consumer cannot afford that. Topsoil, if we till the soil, right, and that means we dig it more inside, heavy rainfall can wash the topsoil away, no nutrients, decrease crop yield. Uses of fertilizer is expensive, right? It decreases food security and it becomes expensive and the poor consumer cannot afford it. And the last one they wanted, all of this was 2018 essay, Gauteng. And how alien plants and climate change affect food security, you already know that. Alien plants deplete the topsoil of water and nutrients, outcompete indigenous plants, right? And they will decrease food security because they use land that we need to grow crop. Climate change, more droughts, more floods. Droughts result in crop loss and livestock. Don't ever forget plants and animals. Floods can cause extensive damage, also damage the farmland. You can't grow a lot of crop, decreasing food security. People also lose their homes during a flood and further. And then they won't have money, which can affect the economy, which will further affect food security. Yeah, they can ask you how coronavirus affects food security. Because of lockdown, People didn't have jobs. So no jobs, no money, and you can't buy food. That's why it's just perfect if everybody grows their own vegetables. And if you grow your own vegetables in the yard, you don't use hormones, you don't use pesticides. It's easier. You can still feed yourself. Okay, so that is now human impact, and we are stopping on page 25 here at loss of biodiversity.